Thanks, Brad. It's a little bit of an echo in this room now. Yeah, I was wondering if I could do it without the mic. Are we recording it? Yeah, okay. I'll keep the mic on. It's really interesting. We were sitting around having a chat earlier, and everybody was saying where they interned, and I was joking that I'm interning at AIAA this summer, which of course is not true, but we do host interns at AIAA. But I actually began my career in Washington, D.C. In this building as an intern on Capitol Hill over 30 years ago, working for a senator from Colorado, from the great state of Colorado, Tim Wirth. And I actually worked just down the hall, just like literally right around, it's about 7 doors down across from where Mitch McConnell's office is now. And I can remember coming to hearings in this room. I can remember seeing Joe Biden actually announce his first presidential race, not the time he actually won, but when he first ran in that rotunda just outside here. So for me, it's a little bit nostalgic coming back and speaking here. I can tell you, I never would have thought that I would actually be standing at a podium speaking in a Senate office building when I was interning there. That never even crossed my mind that someday later we would be doing that. It's exciting that you guys are here today. This is a great organization. I'm super happy to have started it and support it, continue it. And now as president of the International Astronautical Federation, which I'm almost done with my term, I end in October, it's great to see this organization continuing. What's the number now? How many? 60, 70? 79? 79 folks have been sent to the IC on scholarship to be able to live and learn with the space community, to build cohorts and to expand their careers. And by the way, a bunch of companies have started out of it. And a lot of the folks that had Future Space Leaders grants have gone on to start their own space companies and excel in this industry. And they give a lot of credit to their experience at the ICs, the International Astronautical Congresses. So that is really why we started the organization, and it's fantastic to see all you guys here. So it's my honor today to talk a little bit about and set the stage of what's happening in the space economy today. And the space economy is transforming. And I've been working in this sector for over 30 years in space, but it's really right now, the time that you're living in is the most transformational time of this sector. And it's really happened really in the last 5 to 10 years that we've seen the acceleration and transformation take place. And I'm going to talk to you about a couple of things. One is the technological transformation, how we've moved in both launch systems and spacecraft, and then in the fundamental shift in terms of how we think about space and the ecosystem of space and about living and working off planet. So these are really important concepts because for a long time, space was a small part of the global economy. It was something that was really the domain of geostationary communication satellites. It was delivering television signals. It was doing direct-to-home TV, and then what we called VSAT networks, or very small aperture terminal networks, that connected businesses. So if you drove by, I don't know, a Ford dealership, they had a VSAT network up top, and they were exchanging data. But it really wasn't something that people thought about every day in their everyday lives, and how space was part of the fabric of what we do every day and enables what we do. Now, I will say just overall, there's a lot of stuff going on with the budgets now. They're passing bills, which is a good thing, but we're seeing shifts, and particularly in the NASA budget right now. You probably are aware that the NASA science budget is taking a huge cut, almost 50%, so there's a lot of science programs that are being impacted by that. But on the good side, we're seeing money that's flowing into other programs. We're seeing programs of record that are going to continue to be funded, and we're seeing money go into other areas of exploration and in the national security side of the business that will actually help bolster the industry. So while it's a tough time on the science side, and I feel for those folks, I think on the other side, there's a lot of other things that are growth opportunities in space. And as I said, this transformation on the commercial side is really going to continue to drive the space economy. So feel for the science folks, I get it. There's a lot of programs there that we want to see, and hopefully we'll see if they can continue. But I think there's still a lot of opportunity and a lot of optimism around space and what's happening, even with the budget. So let's talk a little bit about perspective. Today, the space economy is about $600 billion a year. And depending on which estimate you look, and there's a lot of estimates out there, Christensen's Bryce does one, the Space Foundation one does one, Satellite Industry Association I used to run does numbers. But a lot of the Wall Street guys are now predicting that it will be $1 trillion space economy within the next 5 years. And what does that mean? Like, it all depends on what you count, by the way. Is Uber in that, right? Because it's using GPS signals to be able to route the car to where you are with your phone. So it all depends on how you think about the space economy. But these numbers are extraordinary from where we came from just a decade ago. And that is really a fundamental change. In the 1960s and 70s, space was really just the purview of superpowers, really. It was the Soviet Union, it was the United States, and China got into the game, Europe followed after that. But it really was something where if you were a small country, if you were a medium-sized country, if you were a commercial entity, it was tough to be a player in the space economy and in the space industry. It was really a negotiation that was taking place and a competition between nation states and mostly the superpowers of the world. Now we're in what I would call a multi-actor space community, where, and I'll ask the question that I asked the group, who is the largest operator of spacecraft in the world today? Anybody? SpaceX. Yeah, SpaceX has over 9,000 satellites in orbit, more than everybody else combined. One company now has more satellites than the rest of all the other countries around the world combined, which is something extraordinary and not something we would have predicted even 5 years ago as to where they stand. They're launching every other day. In fact, they're launching faster than every other day right now in terms of, it's like almost every 29 or 30 hours they are doing a launch and putting up Starlink satellites or satellites for national security community and others. So it's extraordinary how fast this is going. There are over 90 countries now with space offices and space programs that are active. I did the IAC in Milan last year. We did the first ever meeting of 62 space agencies in one room, all talking to each other. That was unprecedented. We would not have seen that even 5 years ago. And so it's such a hot topic right now. Government space budgets, a few figures here, they hit $135 billion in 2024, which was a 10% increase year over year from the year before that. And private investment last year reached $26 billion, which is 30% increase year over year. That's incredible growth for a sector that, again, was kind of not really very well known in the past, and now you see a tremendous amount of interest in this. And it's becoming, I would say, more democratized on that level, if you want to talk about that, with other countries now becoming space actors and space players. So Australia, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Ethiopia, Angola has a space office. We just saw the creation of a Pan-African Space Agency. The African Space Agency based in Europe just got stood up and has a headquarters now. And India, and I was just in India for our recent GLEX conference for the IAF, amazing amount of growth that's taking place there with ISRO, and it was a huge successful conference. You know, they just landed the Chandrayaan-3 mission last year on the lunar surface. We gave them a big award, the IAF, but they have plans for a Gaganyaan human-rated system and their own space station. This is India, and so when people say, oh, why spend money on space? You think about India is actually doing these things with all the other things they have going on in that country. They see this as a generator for engineering, for science, for math, for aspirationally what they want to do as a country to help their economy and help their climate, how they're dealing with climate and the heat there. They're using it to work on agriculture and other projects, so it is a driver. The IAC, by the way, last year, we had over 11,000 people in Milan. It was extraordinary. And again, just 10 years ago, we were lucky if we got 4,000 or 5,000 people at an IAC, so we've more than doubled. We have now 563 members from over 100 countries around the world. And again, you're seeing the momentum that's happening in the sector from that. And I'll just, by the way, say that the space economy, and I've got a couple of my students here from Georgetown in the class today, so they've heard these remarks before, but people think about space and they think about spending on space and how we do space, and they think about what's above us, right, what's overhead. But actually, more money is spent here on the ground than is spent in space. And space is a data-driven, it's a data services-driven business. It's about ones and zeros that are being delivered from space to your phone or to your computer. This is how we monetize space. This is how space is a driver for what's happening here on planet Earth and improving life. We go to space to improve life here on planet Earth. So people think about that. That data sector is the fastest growing and biggest sector of the space economy. By the way, followed by ground equipment, number 2. Satellite manufacturing, number 3. And launch, well, it's always the sexy part with the fire coming out and the explosion sometimes, which we don't like, but okay. That is the smallest part of the space economy. But it's the most important. Why? Because it's low-cost launch that's driving all these other applications that are allowing us to get satellites into space. And so it is a key part of that, even though that's really the delivery truck, right? Just to get the spacecraft up there to be able to do all these cool apps. So when you think of space, and when people talk to you about space, and it's always about the rockets, maybe about the satellites, it's really about all the other stuff that's happening, the software, the data, the applications, and the ground systems that we're using to interpret that data or use that data that's actually what's actually driving this. And a lot of that now has shifted from geostationary orbit, 22,300 miles or 36,000 kilometers above us, to low Earth orbit, and MEO as well. But low Earth orbit is really where the action is happening right now in space. So this is where we have 9,000 SpaceX satellites, Starlink satellites that are in orbit. This is where Kuiper wants to launch 3,000 satellites into orbit, and they're starting, I think they've got almost 100 up now, and they're on that pace now using Ariane 6, Atlas, New Glenn, and even Falcon 9 to launch their satellites into orbit. So you're going to see an incredible increase. Right now, we're projecting that we're going to go from about 10,000 active satellites in orbit. By the way, when I ran this SIA 20 years ago, we had about 350 commercial satellites in orbit. Now we have 9,000, almost 10,000. That's an incredible, I can't, Brad, you're the math guy, you can tell me the math. What you know, it's a lot, it's a lot. But the projection is that by the end of this decade, we will have more than 40,000 spacecraft in orbit. And so I used to say, space is a big place, and you don't have to worry about things running into each other, and now we actually are worried a lot about things running into each other, particularly in LEO. And so there are crowded orbits and how we do space situational awareness, space tracking. This is all super important stuff when we think about it from a policy standpoint right now. And you know, by the way, and I'm just talking about U.S. here in the here at the seat of government here in the United States. But China has plans to launch 13,000 of their own satellites as well. And Europe as well has IRIS². There's a lot of programs out there, so we're going to see a ton of growth. And it's not just communications; it's Earth observation that's driving this. Planet, based in San Francisco, but also has a presence in Europe. They're imaging the entire landmass of the Earth every single day right now. We have ICE and Capella Space using SAR, synthetic aperture radar, that can see through clouds and darkness to do imaging. And then we've got a lunar economy that's burgeoning right now. And so a number of companies are looking at basically mining helium-3 on the lunar surface, bringing that back and using it for use here on planet Earth. So there's a lot of things that are happening in those orbits. In MEO, I did an event, by the way, just across the hill yesterday that Ryan happened to put together for us on GPS, position navigation and timing systems, which are now, there's 7 billion cell phones around the world right now, smartphones, and there's 5 GPS receivers in every single one. If you've got a smartphone in your hand, you're receiving signals not only from the US GPS Space Force system, but you're receiving signals from China's Beidou system, from the GLONASS system, from Russia, from Europe's Galileo system, and actually has a chip in there for Japan's QZSS system, and India's got one coming on too, so just wait for that. Everybody thinks of GPS as a huge enabler, right? And so there's a lot of space economy that's connected to that as well. And I don't want to say that there's nothing going on in GEO right now. GEO's also still a cool orbit. It was our mainstay orbit for a long time. There's companies that are building small GEO satellites now, like Astronautics. There's stuff like Northrop Grumman doing mission extension on satellites that are up there now. They still serve a great purpose. Arthur C. Clarke, who wrote the paper that was published in Collier's way back in the 50s, was really thinking about how to connect the Earth with 3 geostationary satellites, where you could see basically a third of the Earth's surface from space. He also predicted, by the way, that geostationary satellites would go away at some point, and that we would move to more fiber on Earth and to LEO, which was interesting because this is like back in the 60s. He was even thinking about that back then. And from a launch perspective, I'm a guy who worked in the launch industry for almost 30 years. What I will tell you is that reusability is the key to launch now. It is the driver in launch. You see it not only here in the US with New Glenn and with SpaceX with Falcon 9 and Starship, a fully reusable system, but also companies like Maya Space in Europe that are looking at reusable systems. And you've got China now, and even I think Honda just showed, right? Honda, the car company, just did a short hop with a vehicle in Japan and showed how they can do reusable. That is the future to lowering the cost of access to space and lowering the cost of launch. So a lot going on there, and it's not just reusability, but the massive fairings, payload fairings, the volume that we're able to put, how many satellites can we stuff in there, how do we deploy these things in orbit. These are all the fundamental drivers of what is transforming how we design satellites and put them into space. Space station, 25 years now in operation above us. Maybe 5 years or more we'll see in operation, but we've seen now a huge increase on commercial space stations. And the past couple of years, I was actually fortunate to be working on actually 3 of the 4, maybe, you know, if you count. Or I was at Blue Origin when Orbital Reef was announced. I didn't really work that much on it. Then I worked for VAST Space, for Voyager Space on the Starlab program, and then I did some consulting last year for VAST. So I worked on 3, not for Axiom, sorry, the Axiom guys. I don't know if there's anybody from Axiom here. Didn't get a chance to work on them. But and Axiom is doing amazing things. So, but isn't that cool that we have like 4 companies that are actually here in the United States trying to build a commercial space station and put it in orbit? Phase 2 procurement for that comes out this year, and that'll be really interesting. By the way, the policy, from a policy standpoint, how do we deal with commercial space stations is going to be a game changer to think about how we do that, and we do that safely. Rebecca and I worked on that for a long time last year, thinking about how that actually would play out. But really, that's about trying to actually utilize microgravity to be able to do more experiments up there, to do things in biomedical, in manufacturing, in other areas where we're going to push the state of the art, using zero gravity to be able to do things we can't do here on planet Earth. So that's another huge driver that's coming. So I think when you put all these things together, the moon, LEO, private space stations, exploration programs, and by the way, I haven't even talked about going to Mars, right? And we all want to go to Mars someday. That'll be cool. I don't know if I want to live there, but okay. It seems like we should be exploring other planets in the galaxy. I think there's a ton of things that show promise, and so I kind of wish I was your age now. Like for me, when I started in this industry, it was about the space shuttle and geocomsats, and that was kind of it, right? We had some probes that were going to other planets, but really the opportunities that afford you guys in your generation are something that are extraordinary. I couldn't even think about 30 years ago, plus years ago when I started in the space sector. So you're living in the future now, and the technology that's here now is going to enable you guys to do things that 30 years from now you'll go, I remember Clay gave this speech way back when you're up here talking, and you'll be like, 40,000 satellites, that was nothing, right? So really cool stuff. I'm going to wrap that up, Brad. Basically, I think this is an extraordinary event, extraordinary time for the folks that are here. I wish you guys all the best at this event and in your careers. Anything I can do from, oh, by the way, Mary Scott will get mad at me. There's AIAA cards on all of your things, and there's a QR code on there, and you can shoot it, and you will immediately get onto our mailing list and get My Daily Launch every day for free. No obligation, and if you want to join AIAA, that's great too. We're equal opportunity here. So I think you guys should think about writing a paper, an abstract for the IAF. I'm doing all my commercials now, Brad. Write an abstract for the IAF so you can go to an IAC, get funded by future space leaders, write a paper for AIAA, come to one of our shows and events. We do scholarships as well. There's lots of promise for you guys if you're thinking about how to get involved, how to network, how to get jobs, how to intern in the industry where we can help. So we look to do that. By the way, we have 263 student branches right now? 263 student branches around the world and growing rapidly. We just added 8 this year. You should check out AIAA if you're still in school and get involved in your AIAA chapter. So it's a lot of fun. All right? Thanks for having me.